Okay, hello everyone. See a few people are on the stream. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Hello. Okay, just give us a minute. I'm just trying to get something set up. Okay, may as well get started. Fingers crossed you can hear me. You can hear us. Okay, perfect. Right. Yeah, I've got a lot of audio stuff going all over the place on my machine, so there's lots of weird routes and things going on that are not necessarily good practice. Right. Yes. So Fairlight. So it's this. It's a beta. Let's get that clear right from the outset. There is a lot of things that are broken, but as you can see from what I'm presenting on the screen, this looks like a mixer. There is audio passing. I currently have this coming in via a Dante PCIe card. So I've got 128 channels of Dante coming in, and I've got a second machine with another card that's spitting out 128 channels of audio from a multitrack. Don't ask what the multitrack is, I don't remember. So first of all, let's talk about what doesn't seem to work. And this is the same on Mac and PC at the moment. These bits are broken. So let me get the right mouse. If I go to my ATEM, this is supposed to integrate with certain ATEMs directly from the little ones like this. I've got like a mini just behind me, and I've got an extreme underneath. It doesn't work with all of them, but it works with some of them. And then what you have to do to make it work, or what you're supposed to do to make it work, is in the settings, which is not in the setup. If you go to the audio tab, you now get a USB connection mode. So you can change it from webcam to USB digital audio. You can't do both, it's one or the other. So that's not necessarily the most useful thing for a lot of virtual productions and stuff like that. You're going to want both, but there we go. That is what it is. So that's what you're supposed to do. And then what you do in Fairlight when you launch it, in your preferences, you can choose your essentially your audio device. You can only have one. There's some caveats around that. So like here I would choose ATEM switcher, and then if I was to, I've hidden it. If I click save, it's going to tell me I need to restart Fairlight, which is fine. We can do that. Now, this is where I hit my first problem within Fairlight. There is an ATEM software update that goes with Fairlight. So there's two components to this. I'm running both the latest versions of the betas, so they are not necessarily finished products, but this will give you a gist of where this product is going, and I think they're going to be pretty quick in terms of fixing it and getting it all working. So once you've chosen the ATEM as your audio engine, it will pick up which one you've got connected, which is pretty cool. There's also in here you'll also see some playback buffer sizes, some record buffer sizes. You can set them auto, or you can change this to lower or higher. This does affect on ASIO devices. This does affect the latency, but it seems like I cannot confirm this because it doesn't work. It seems like the latency is fixed on the ATEM range at 61.3 milliseconds, which is 3 frames ish at 50 hertz, maybe 4 or 5 frames at 60. So, well, it would be 4 frames, just over 4 frames at 60. Oh no, it's exactly 4 frames at 60 actually. Sorry. So that's what you would do. That's how it's supposed to work. We're gonna have to ignore the fact this doesn't work for a minute. And then what you can do is you can go File, New Show, and you can pick from some templates. So they're handily, they've added in all of the devices that they are going to support in this list. So I have it's a mini, it's the SDI Pro ISO. So I'm just going to recall this preset, create, and then give it a name. New Show 6 will do. And it will create me like a project that replicates the inputs, outputs, etc. And it's patched them all already as well for me. So this is my little mixer. You can see my inputs along here. You've got my main. They've got these subs, which I guess are groups, and then you've got some auxes as well, and then you've got the mon feed, which is like your PFL monitor bus. So you can define all of these things. It's all soft definable, which is really cool. But that's kind of where this software sort of is designed to go. So the idea would be is that you pull in your switcher if you're using a switcher as your source, and then you create your mixer from a template. Now that's great, but it doesn't work, and it doesn't work for me on Mac. It doesn't work on PC. I just cannot get this to work at all with actual audio being passed. What is really cool though, if I just go back to another show, if I get the I borrowed an Extreme so I could show this before I knew it wasn't going to work. If I create an Extreme project file, on the back of the Extremes there is a headphone port, and yeah, that is correct. That is the correct layout. You can actually patch your monitor to the headphone port, which is quite cool. So I'm going to jump around a bit, but in the output routing here, you can actually patch your. It has not reset. This is wrong. So I'll just go set up. Remove disconnected devices. Reset I/O. And yeah, so in a correct project file, this has gone wrong. So this is clearly another bug. Along the top here, you would have HDMI 1 left right, HDMI 2 left right, and then you'd have headphones left right, and that represents the 3 outputs that you have when you load in a project file for the Extreme, because it has the HDMI 1, HDMI 2, and then you also have the headphone port on the back, which is pretty cool. I have not managed to find a way to patch to an output, but I think there's a lot more going on here that's broken than just that. So we're going to avoid this. We're going to go back to a different project. Let me load this one. Super. So another bug, when you load a project, it doesn't store your routes. So you can choose your inputs in here, but as you can see here, it's not pulled back in my previous routes, which is a little bit annoying, but we can go preferences. I'm going to have to change this. So the PCIe card I've got in the back will only work with ASIO. So we need to change that to ASIO, and it's going to ask me to restart Fairlight again. So that's fine. Let's get rid of Fairlight. And let's launch it again. So far, pretty buggy implementation in terms of the ATEM Mini and the Extreme, and or the SDI and the Extreme SDI. I did try it with another ATEM Mini and it doesn't work. I've tried it with my Constellation. My Constellation isn't supported because it's a HD version. It's a 4ME HD version. It's not supported as an audio device. I think it will come in the future, but for now it doesn't. It's not supported. So let's get this set back up. So ASIO device. In fact, let's go through if you were setting this up from scratch. So at the top here, you can choose your workflow scenario. So primary mixer. This is the only mixer I've got on the network, or this will be the only mixer I want on my network. You can have a fail-safe mixer, a prep mode, or remote mode. I actually do have another machine on my network that is in remote mode. We'll come back to that later, but I'm going to leave it as primary mixer. I'm going to leave it as allow remote control. If you need to have that selected so that you can connect to it remotely. It's on the LAN for me, so I don't know if it works over WAN, but there's some issues with that as well. But yes, so I can choose my RedNet device, and it has changed my patch back, so that's great. And you can see that there is actually audio coming through. So there's some more stuff to do down here. this would be if you've got a hardware device, I believe, like a control surface. There's some video stuff, the VST, where your folders for your VSTs are. So you can actually use this as a VST host. In theory, I've not tried it, and then you can use it as a. So I've got an NDI VST plugins loaded, and there's some that didn't load. So there we go, and there's some advanced settings. This is where you can type stuff if you need to. I assume you would be told by Blackmagic if you need to do that. So you can see I've got some audio passing. This is that Dante multitrack. So there's some audio, you know. When I set up this show, I could only put in 99 channels. So I think that's another limitation. So when you set up your show, you can use a template or you can do custom build. And this is really powerful. So you've got your inputs, your auxes, your subs, your mains. You can choose whether they're mono, stereo, left, center, right, or 5.1, which is pretty cool. So this is obviously being aimed at broadcast with those set of options, which is great. You can have both sets of buses, which is also great. So you might have a mix that's going to a stereo broadcast, and you might also be doing a 5.1 record. So you can do both of those, or you might be mixing in 5.1 and down mixing to. So you might have a sub that's 5.1, and you might have a main that's left-right. So there's lots of different configurations that you could put this software mixer into, which is great. So that's pretty cool. Yes, so let's deal with routing first. So in the window thing up here, you've got the patching matrix. And this is where you would do your input patch from your input channels. And then obviously you have one for your output channels as well. This, if you're used to Dante, this is pretty obvious. If you're used to, I guess if you're used to like a Avid profile, you're also very familiar with this kind of workflow. There's a setup IO, and then in here you get another menu, and then in here you get some more options like remove defective devices and reset IO. So that's pretty cool. You can hide channels, so if you're not using them, you can hide them, and then you can also protect channels, which I believe means that you then can't change their routes. So that's that. I'm going to exit out of this for now. So that's how you would set up your inputs, your outputs in terms of like routing. Now, I think I did have it routed. Let me just check. I should have my outputs routed to 1 and 2. That's my... yeah, that's fine. And then if I... let me see if I've got Dante controller on this machine. No. Let me go to a different machine and let me launch Dante controller. Sorry, 1 second. So I'm receiving that. So 2233, 2243, 2243. 2243. This one. Okay. So, in theory, yeah, unfortunately, it is outputting to the Dante network, but I have an Avio that doesn't want to play ball for some reason. Like, great, not very useful for trying to show you some audio stuff. Let me see if I can get that working just quickly. Audio receive. Change, yes. Dante USB audio. Let me just add that back in again. Yeah. Okay, for whatever reason that is not coming back over my Dante network to my Avio. I think my Avio is broken. It's great. Right, so let's go back to this this workflow. So this is the main mixer. You've got your metering at the top. You've got your output stuff here. You've got a PFL, so there's a solo thing down here to solo. And when it solos, it should come through the PFL, like so. There's also a mute. So that's pretty much like any standard mixer. I'm going to get rid of the meters for the time being, and I guess we'll come back to the metering. Then, so yes, you've got your input choice up here, so you click on it, you can choose no input. You can choose one of many inputs there. You can also choose your generator, so there's some built-in generation stuff. There's a media player, the Q player. The Q player is quite an interesting one. The Q player is built in, and it does work. And you've got some channel settings where you can go in and change essentially your head amp section. So you've got your direct outs, you've got a mix minus stuff. So if you're doing mix minuses, you can adjust this here. High pass filter, delay. The delay on this is quite substantial. So we could go frames and add in 24,000 frames, or we can change milliseconds and add in, multiple seconds of delay. So again, this is very much designed probably more for broadcast than it is for in-room live production. But yes, you've got your gain, you've got input paths, you've got some arm for the recorder. There's a built-in virtual sound check thing built into this, which is interesting. But again, it's one of those ones. It's like, okay, great. I'd rather it just work first. But I can see where they're going with this. When this is finished and they get rid of all these bugs, this is going to be a fantastic piece of software. So that's your sort of head amp section. And then essentially it's pretty much the same as a normal analog console or a digital console where you've got your channel strip. So the signal comes in at the top and then it goes down. So effects, this is very much like the is it the LV1 from Waves, the digital console, where you define your own signal path that goes through the console. In here you've got your effects, so you have many effects that you can add to the channel. So let's go for a dialogue processor, for instance. You can quite easily see this is very much designed for that broadcasty type workflow, and these are all your settings. And obviously you'd be able to solo this and then change those settings, which is good. I don't know if you can do a listen just to the effects of a plugin or an effect at the moment, but that's pretty cool. You can also have presets for them, which is pretty cool, and you can add a preset here, which is really cool. So again, very much designed for, I need to quickly apply this to like 10 channels or whatever. There is an awful lot of presets. Let's go to dynamics and multiband compressors. There should be a de-esser somewhere. I think a de-esser might be in that channel strip. There you go. Restoration, de-esser, noise reduction, de-hummer. So these are clearly things that are broadcast first and everything else second, which is fine. And then obviously you've got an on-off for your effects. This is almost like if you had an analog console, you'd have an on-off on your inset point. However, there is also on and off for each of your little plugins. So you can turn each one off and you can also use this little, it's probably very difficult to see, but there's like an on-off button there that affects it as well. So I assume on the surface this would be very easy to go and change, but obviously in a software when you're using the mouse, not so easy. If you're on a touchscreen, I think this would be very difficult to operate because that is a very small toggle button when you're looking on it on the channel strip. So there is more options. You can change it, you can disable it, delete it, whatever. So let me just change the, I'm just going to stick a vocal channel. Lovely. I don't believe you can just drag it. Oh, you can drag and drop. great. So you can drag and drop these effects as well. So if you need to change your processing chain, you can do that quite easily. And then obviously you have your dynamics. So this is a double click to enter the dynamics, and it's pretty cool. Obviously this, I assume this is a kick drum, being channel 1 on a multi-track recording. Maybe let's go to a different channel that's got a bit more audio coming in. So I think these were synthetic synths or something. So let's have a look here. So you can see that there's a like a trail. So again, if you're in broadcast, you might have missed exactly what you're looking for, but you might be looking at the trails to sort of work out what that is. And then in here, you've got your standard sort of set of dynamic processing. So you've got an expander or gate. It's one or the other. Your threshold, your range, your ratio. So if we were putting a gate on this, we might be putting something like that. And then of course you've got your compressor, so you can compress the top, and then if you really need to, you can also limit. So you've got your gain reduction stuff, you've got your makeup gain. Again, if you're used to an audio console, this all makes sense to you. These are all settings you can change. This one does have a listen, so you can set the listen on and listen to the sidechain. You can sidechain to the other channels. So again, if you're doing something that's a little bit more broadcasty, where you might have multiple routes coming in, or you might be doing some translation where you need to duck or compress, sorry, one thing against the source from somewhere else, you might be using the sidechain to compress this, and using the source, the sidechain source being the translator over the top, or the interpreter over the top, I should say. So that's where this would come in. So that's pretty cool. Carrying on down the signal, down the channel strip, you've got your EQ. Again, double click to get into this. You've got your preset stuff at the top. This is drag and drop, so you can, drag and whatever. You can change down here your types. So you can have like a pinch. So lots of different types of EQ. Obviously you can change where it is, how it works. They've probably done this to just to optimize the code rather than having 4 that just go anywhere. There is additional bands that you can turn on, so you get 6 bands as part of this parametric, but they're not all fully parametric if I remember. No, they are fully parametric, but the band 1 and band 6 don't have the frequency ranges, so they have to sort of sit at the top and the bottom, which is, again, very reasonable. If you're used to any audio console, that's pretty normal. But yes, and on here you can see both the original signal trace and also your post EQ signal trace. So that's pretty useful. There's different equalizer types in there. You've got a makeup gain as well at the end. So that's pretty cool. Again, you've got the presets and stuff like that. Up here, I think there should be like a reset. So copy, paste, clear, load target, etc., etc. So lots of interesting stuff in the equalization settings, which is great. Again, if you're in broadcast, that's going to be very useful. Talkback. So your talkback is if you've got some talkback set up, that's how you would talk back. Going past that, your audio follow video. So you can set it to, attach to a camera. There is a place where you can change the curves on your audio follow video and change the way, like how much time is taken for it to cross over. So that's pretty cool. You've got some auxes. So unlike a traditional console where all of your auxes are available on every channel strip, you can essentially add an aux. So this cleans up your workflow. So again, if you're in a broadcast environment, you're probably not going to have everything going to lots of auxes. So being able to select which ones it's going to and add it, and then it cleans up that section of your screens very nicely. And then once you've added it, again, you get an on-off toggle, you get the controls, and then you get a little drop down that means you can like remove it and change it. So and then in here, you get whether you want it pre or post. You have a mute, your send level, and if it's a stereo aux, you get your left-right. So that's pretty cool. There is another way to see So if you were like trying to mimic sends on faders, you can do that from somewhere else in the software, which we can come back to. So I'm going to leave this going to the aux. You've got your pan here. If we were doing 5.1 and we had a 5.1 bus, we would have a little square here, and it would show us our position in 2D space. There is also a mode where you can do multi-spatial audio, but I haven't played with that. This is where you'd had your groups or your sub buses. So we'll add that one there. And again, you have a little toggle and then you can remove it. So a little bit less on that one. You can change your main. If you've got multiple mains, you can change where it's routed to and add a second one or whatever if you have a second one. You can also add some VCAs. There's 10 of them by default, so that's how you do that. The isolation for snapshot recalling is there, so that's pretty cool. Again, if you're familiar with Yamaha consoles, that's going to be pretty obvious. I'm pretty sure all of the other consoles have similar snapshot capabilities. So that's it for your channel strip. It's pretty cool. And then over in your main section, you have your. I should have not put the. Let me move my face for a minute. There we go. Right. Yes. Then over in your output section, you have a solo, so you can solo it to your solo bus. You've got your monitor out there. You've got your subs, you've got your auxes. So this aux up here, why was it not sending? Let's send some level to that aux. There we go. And I can show you the pre and the post difference. Maybe there's a little bit of difference, but I'm pretty sure everyone knows how that works. And then essentially going back in reverse, same as if you have an analog console. So for your sub buses, you can send your main if you so wish. So that's how like a group would work. You can also send your auxes to your mains. Again, I think in broadcast that would be very useful, but if you're coming from a live environment, that might not necessarily be very useful. If you're doing conference work, so if you're doing like broadcast for conference, you probably would have your auxes possibly set up as like you might have a group of lavs, you might have a group of headsets, a group of handhelds, etc., or grouped by microphone type, and then stick an EQ for that microphone type. So you do your personal, what the person sounds like on the channel, what the microphone sounds like on an aux or a subgroup, and then you mix it all back together. Annoyingly, you can't do auxes to sub to main. That's not a feature yet. But again, in here you've got some. You can do aux to sub and then sub to main, but there's no twiddly knobs for that section, I believe. Yeah, it's either on or off, and then you get a pan, but that's not very useful. You can do an aux to an aux, so you can get quite interesting with that kind of routing. You possibly can create a feedback loop if you route an aux to an aux and then that aux back to itself. You can do audio follow video, so you can group things together and have them follow a video channel. So this might be really useful. Again, thinking about broadcast, I'm thinking like the last leg where you've got 4 presenters on stage. You might have all of those 4 presenters, and you might have those 4 into an aux or a sub. And then you might say that sub follows the video. So if they're not on screen, they are turned off, and when they are on screen, it's automatically routed up. So that's something you could do, a little bit of automation. Again, you've got talkback. Again, you've got some EQ, you've got dynamics. You can insert things on those auxes and subs and mains, which is really quite a lot of powerful stuff. There's quite a lot there that you can imagine. You can create quite a lot of weird and wacky routing and stuff, which is pretty good. Now, there is also matrices as well. So it's not that one, it's the output matrix. And no matrix buses have been defined. So there is a way of adding matrices somewhere. I think I have missed it when I set up the show. No, there is an additional matrix somewhere, but I can't remember where it is. No. We'll come back to that at some point, maybe. Yeah. So other things that are quite interesting is you've got some bus assignments. So in here you can change a few things, what buses are assigned to various things. Let's get rid of that. You also have your VCA assignments. This is the equivalent of your sends to or your mix on faders. So your bus contributors. So like sub bus 1 has audio 53 channel coming into it. So we can close that for a second. So let's go to the aux. You can also get to this from the channel, but I can't remember where exactly it is on the channel. There was a way to get to it from the channel, but essentially you just go window and then bus contributors. And then depending on what you have, I'm going to have to add another channel. So if I add this to aux 1, you'll see that I have essentially pots rather than like a fader bank that you could use. So again, that's pretty cool. Again, it's probably very broadcasty, not very live. But yeah, that's pretty cool. You have a master level there, which obviously affects your fader. You say it's in the view, open bus management. Ooh, view. I don't have a view, open bus management. Are you on a Mac potentially? And on my Windows, is this potentially different there? Bus management, bus assignment, open bus management. There we go. Matrix. There you go. Add a matrix. That is how you add a matrix. That is a bit of a user quirk because you'd expect to be able to create your matrices. Normally, you'd create your matrices at the front. Yeah, window. Yeah, got there. Cool. So yes, you've got your matrix there, and you can send your main to your matrix, I believe. Yeah, so matrices, they're a thing as well. Actually, they're not going to be very useful, are they? You can't send. Can you send a channel to a matrix? Open output matrix. How did I get my channel to sub assignment boxes on the main mixer window? Do you mean this bit over the right hand side? It's on a like you can just drag it in from the right hand side. Is that what you meant by that? Or how did you get your channel to sub on the main mixer window? That is potentially also in this open bus contributors. So you select a bus and it will show you all of your contributors to that bus. So obviously if I click that's the main bus. There we go. On an input channel under the pan left right. Like this. That's how you add them to a sub. Is that what you mean? I'm confused by your question, sorry. Ollie, is it mini Maple? Yes. Yeah, you can. So, yeah, Dave's answered you for that question. Oh, sent me a photo. Let's have a look. Yes, so this is pretty much, you know, it's a soft mixer. So if you're used to a soft mixer, it's a mixer basically. Open player recorder, so you can record and play back content, which is quite nice inside your mixer. So again, a very broadcasty type thing to be able to do. There's also a cue player. So this is where you load in your cues and then you can fire them and it will play back. So interestingly, you will need a channel for this. So if you create one using a template, they all contain channels. But if you don't create one from a template, what you do is you go up here, change your input to a generator, and then it should have cue player and left right. So you don't get one per cue. You get one for the whole cue player. So if you're stacking cues, you can't mix them separately. So that might be an oversight, I think, because that would be very useful. There's also MIDI cue stuff in there as well, but that doesn't quite work for me. So you've got some snapshots, some global recall options, some preset libraries, and then your audio follow video stuff, which is where you set your curves. So this is where you might set for camera 1. If this is your take position, you might have it ramping up, and then when it's camera off. So this is your in and this is your out essentially, and you can just change the curves to be whatever you want. You can also set the time down the bottom, which affects how your essentially an auto mix would work. Auto mix basically on channel. Well, it would also, or when they go to a different take and that camera goes off screen, you'd have this ramp down, and that's where you change these ramps, and you can change it on the 16 cameras. I'm not entirely sure how you'd map this to, like if you've got a 40 input switcher or a 64 input switcher, how you'd map those, but that's what you can do. In your generators, you have your standard set of generators really for doing stuff, and then in your setup you can obviously choose a audio file to play back. So again, very useful, pink, white in there, and that's, you know, if you're used to audio, this is very simple. Your generators, again, you need to route them in here to an input channel, and you have some choice of how they work there. Your talkback mic is where you would set your talkback stuff. Again, you sort of get a channel strip for that, but it's a very minimal one. You have to set your input to your talkback somewhere else, which is in your patching matrix, and it is in the inputs. And then if you close the inputs of the inputs, you should have somewhere down here a talkback input. Or is it a talkback output? It is not there, it's somewhere else. And then obviously your monitoring is where you can change your monitoring. So you have different sets of speakers. So again, in the broadcast world or a listen suite, you're going to have multiple monitors. So you set those in there, choose your layouts and stuff, and then yeah, you can patch them in the you patch them somewhere else. So you patch them in the setup IO in here, and then you also need to allocate them in your matrix, your patching matrix on your output side of things. So there's a lot of different places to go for different things, but I think if you were using this in anger on a show, you would quickly get used to what's where. And I think, I think Blackmagic are clearly aiming this at a broadcast truck type environment or a studio where things don't really change that often, which means that you could have it set up and then you don't need to change it, which is great. And that's kind of it. I really wanted to show off more like real world stuff, showing how the ATEM minis work or the ISOs, because that was really quite interesting, and also you can see it all in one place. The downside, I think, of this software that a lot of people are going to find very quickly is that you can only really patch one audio device at a time. So obviously in this scenario, I've got it coming in over Dante, so I can do all my patching in Dante controller or DDM if I was using DDM. But the limitation here of having essentially only one audio engine, I think is going to be quite a bit of a problem for a few people. But interestingly, in here, I did find this, which is the Fairlight Audio Accelerator. So I think they will be bringing out a unit that is a hardware processor to go with this, and I would expect that to have lower latency than running it in your machine. Talking about latencies, you can change your latencies here, and it will update and give you different latencies here. You can see that I have some failures. It will give me an error down below where my face is if there is problems. Yeah. So lots of different options, and that changes your latencies. Interestingly, on the record size, it doesn't add any latency. So yeah. Let me close this. Where's the thing? Yeah, okay. So that's that. That's kind of really it. I wanted to show the audio, but I can't get the audio routed back into vMix. My Dante Avio is not working, which is very frustrating. So I can't actually show any audio processing taking place. It does work. I have Dante Virtual Sound Card on my laptop over here, and I can route to that, and it sees it. I can use DVS in. That's the wrong mouse. If I have DVS installed, I can choose it from this list, but it has to be ASIO, and then in here it will appear as an ASIO device. So DVS then has to run in ASIO mode, not in the WDM mode. So that's also quite interesting. Okie dokie. Right. That's that. Okie dokie. Okay. I'm quickly going to take a 5-minute break, and then I will be back. There we go, I am back, and now I'm unmuted. Great. I can use an unmute switch. Perfect. So the subs, it should just appear underneath pan. You need to have a sub in your project when you create your project for it to be there. And if you remove them, it doesn't remove it, but you need to have the subs there when you create your project for the little plus to show up. Okay. Question: what kind of PC spec versus audio path have you managed? So it's quite limited. Obviously, this is this is very new, and I'm using it in a very broken way at the moment. Obviously, when they were designing this, I assume they never really thought about Dante being a use case. So obviously, here I have that's the wrong mouse again. Here I've got a hardware Dante card coming in, and I have a hardware. It's the same device, so I've obviously got inputs and outputs both via Dante. So I have been able to put a TO on the other end of that Dante, and then stick a microphone in, and then have it go through, and then come back out, routed out on the mains I had it on. So just to test what things actually sounded like. So yeah, there is latency. You're never going to get rid of it. It's not as low as a hardware console because it's software. But in terms of like PC spec and like how that affects the audio, down in this bottom corner there is a cores used. That's the wrong mouse again. There's a cores used and then a percentage. Now I'm on a 12-core machine. This is an Intel Xeon machine, clocked at like 2.5 gigahertz, so it's not a particularly fast or modern processor. I'm running Windows 10, and it's using 14%, and I have 99 input channels to things to a main and aux and a few other bits, and it's using 14%. So I think in terms of like the amount of resources and power that's being used, hardly anything. I know when I run it on my M1 Mac, again it is absolutely fine. It doesn't use a lot at all. You can see my processors are not really doing a lot. It does feel like it is a largely single-threaded application. I did think this when I last loaded it, so it seems to have one core that will have most of the work, and then the others, and then obviously it bounces around between cores. But it doesn't seem to use a particularly massive amount of RAM or a particularly massive amount of processing. I think most of it is just the application itself rather than the actual audio, rather than the audio processing. So, yeah, it seems like you can get away with a lot of processing with very little compute. Yeah. This machine is a DDR3 machine, so it's not even like RAM speed massively affects it. So yeah, I think any old PC will work as long as it's got enough grunt to do what you're trying to do. And of course you can try it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I think I certainly have subs. I think it might be a bug. Another bug. Yes, there is a lot of bugs in this software, but there was a lot of bugs in a lot of early audio live software. Low latency processing of a lot of things is quite challenging, I think. Cool. So let's jump back up to these meters. Obviously, you've got your control room meter that you can choose your source and stuff. If you've got multiple mains, you can choose which main you're going to listen to. You've got your auxes and stuff in that list as well. And your meters. You've got your studio. So if you were doing a sort of like a studio feed and a control room feed, and then you've got like a PFL feed as well, so you can have like multiple output submixes coming out of it. Obviously, again, very much aimed at those broadcast situations. What is really interesting over here is your loudness monitor. So up here, these three dots, you can choose your loudness source. You can choose what scaling you want to use. So if you're doing broadcast, you're going to be EBU 128, which automatically changes your 0 point. So this is going to be quite an interesting. Again, it's very broadcast friendly to have an LU meter, but a lot of people are going to get this wrong because of a lot of misunderstandings around how these standards interact, where they should be mixing to, what is loud, what is not loud. So this is like, so -9 is sort of like where this 0 point is on this one. Now, YouTube, for instance, YouTube wants -14 full scale. That's its normalization point. So essentially where this white line is going to be the normalization, what your normalization target is, and then everything else is sort of just a scalar around that. But the scale changes depending on which spec you are in. So it's not the same scale for every one of these meters, which I think is going to confuse a lot of people as well. So again, you get another one there for absolute scale. There is a lot of yeah, that's going to get very confusing for a lot of people who don't understand how logarithmic scales work and all the different standards of all different broadcasters. And obviously, like, you know, Spotify is neg 12, 13, 14, somewhere there. There is an EBU standard that's neg 21. So I think Apple is neg 20. Yeah. So there's a lot of different options there for this this loudness meter. It's great there is a loudness meter, and it is great that you can choose the source. But I think a lot of people will get confused with this. And then there's some control stuff up here, so that's pretty cool. Yes, the inspector doesn't really seem to have a lot of stuff in it for the time being. It just seems to show you levels, so I'm not really sure what exactly they're expecting that to do, but there's that as well. So remote, let's talk about remote. So you can see down this bottom corner here, bottom left, I have it saying remote active. That is because I have another instance running on my laptop. Now, I'm not going to show my laptop directly, but basically when you open up the project in, the wrong mouse again, in your preferences, so on the mixing computer, the processing computer, you have it set to your primary mixer, or you might have it set to your failsafe mixer, and you allow remote control. Okay, that's how you set up your mixing, you know, your mixer, if that's what you want to call it. And then in terms of like the remote end, what you would do is you go remote mode, and then you point your, where it says primary engine, that's where you point your instance to. So this is what I've done at the other end. I've got the IP of this machine and put it in at the other end. So I'm going to cancel this so I don't make any changes. And then if I go to the remote end, I can, if you look at my audio 1, I can remotely change it. So that's not my mouse. My mouse is over here on audio 3, but I can turn up and down my audio 1 remotely. So this is clearly aimed at REMI production workflows where you can have your primary mixer somewhere and then you'd have like a VPN or something to your remote mixer. I don't know if it works over WAN or any kind of like cloud stuff yet, but it definitely works over LAN. So if it works over LAN, you can do it over VPN. It is relatively speedy, as in like I can't tell the difference between operating the mouse connected to the remote or the mouse connected to this machine. They both feel very fluid and very comfortable in terms of like operating them. But the remote instance doesn't show any of the ballistics, so I don't have anything to go on in terms of levels coming into those channels. And also, if I change my inserts, for instance, if I change my inserts or my effects, they call them here, if I change them on this primary engine, they go to the remote. If I add them on the remote, they don't go back to the primary engine at the moment. So I don't really know where that bug's come from, but there's a bug there somewhere. And also, for instance, if I add on the remote to channel 1, if I add aux 2, my remote now has 1 and 2, and my primary engine only shows 1. So it feels like there's some sort of problem between the primary and the remotes at the moment where certain things only go one way. But again, this is beta software. If they get ballistics working and fix the bug about feedback going back, I can see this being very, very useful in terms of like having multiple engineers using the same processing host. Because what you can do is you can separate your engineers out and give them sections of the mixer, if you like, and then they can all have their own mixes and stuff like that, which again is very common on those bigger shows where you've got higher channel counts. So yeah, you could have them on remote workstations, and if you can have them remote, as in like over the internet remote, assuming you can get audio to them so they can actually see what they're doing, so you'd want to send them the main mixes or whatever their the main output is, and also you'd want to send them their PFL bus. Assuming you can send them those, you potentially can remotely mix a show using this software, but it's not quite there for that kind of workflow just yet. But it's clearly the direction that they are going, which is really interesting to see. And it's free software, so again, I can see where Blackmagic are going with the free software. So free software works, and then if you want a pro, to make it pro, you buy their hardware accelerator that goes with it when it gets announced or released. But as you can see from the preferences, they are definitely aiming to have what do they call it? An audio accelerator. Whether that's a PCIe card that goes in the machine or whether that's a hardware box, no idea. But I think that's definitely a direction that's going to be very interesting for the broadcast truck. Yes. So there's those MIDI settings. Just going back up the questions. There's those MIDI settings, so you can change which one you want to use. And I haven't really got any MIDI stuff connected. I don't have any MIDI devices on this machine, so this is where your MIDI devices would show up. And that is pretty much all I can say about this software tonight, because I've hit too many bugs to show anything more useful, to be perfectly honest. The ATEMs don't work. My constellation is not a supported model, and for whatever reason, my Avio does not like the audio. Let's try it unplugging and plugging it back in again. Does not like the audio coming back in across the network, or coming in over the USB, I should say. So that is a little bit disappointing. It's very disappointing, to be perfectly honest. Does PFL backstop nicely? What exactly do you mean by backstop nicely? As in, if you're PFLing a channel and then go to the next channel PFL and then you remove the second PFL, does it go back to the first? No. No. No, it doesn't really have. I think PFL will be the wrong. It's a solo. Which I guess there's a terminology. Broadcast this, you get a fader at the top. No, it doesn't do that. Wait, yeah, okay, I know what you mean. So on like in like a radio station, you pull it to the bottom, and there's like a notch, and if you pull it past, or you have your finger on it and you pull it to the very bottom, it does. Interesting. How are you getting it working? Because it doesn't seem to work for me. If I pull it to the bottom. Show settings. Okay. Ah, so you have to turn it on. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So then, yeah, when you pull it to the bottom, you get the solo back on. Interesting. I didn't know that setting was there. That's very cool. So here you go. This is another thing. Ah, yes. If you remove the interlock, can you stack solos? Yes, you can. So that's pretty cool as well. That is very useful to know that that is in there as well. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is going to be a really cool piece of software. Like, yeah, as you say, it's a beta. Version 1 is going to be pretty cool. But I can imagine, like, version 7, version 8 is going to be a pretty solid soft mixer, especially if you get a hardware accelerator that's, designed for audio processing on the network as well, and then your software just becomes a remote surface for that. I can see that being a very, very useful tool. And knowing Blackmagic, it will be a 1U device. Audio processing doesn't need anywhere near as much as video, sorry. So I can see that being a really, really useful piece of kit to have. It's just like a 1U box that does all your audio. You might even have some I/O on it. It'll be interesting to see how. I'm using the wrong mouse again. I've got too many mice on my desk. It'll be really interesting to see how it develops with 2110, because obviously 2110 is network based, and you've got the AES 67 audio that's sort of kind of embedded within 2110. So yeah, the audio over IP, whether that is an accelerator only thing or whether they're going to open that up for all bits of software, as in like bring your own hardware and just you get an audio over IP 2110 interface. That would be really cool. I suspect this will be on the later versions, not the first few versions, to get 2110 working. or possibly you're going to have a 2110, a Blackmagic 2110 card in your machine to be able to do 2110 streams, audio streams. But I can see any of those solutions being really, really quite cool. If you're a 2110 workflow, keeping it all in 2110 network would be really cool. So the panels themselves don't process any audio. They're just a remote for the processing engine. So if you're in a 2110 environment, you potentially would have your control network and your 2110 network converged. So you just have a cable going to your, from your switch network, you just have a cable going to your audio processor and a cable going to your Surface, and it just works. But in terms of like different types of traffic, it's control only to the panels. It would be really cool if they built in, like on the Barco EC210, you've got your control surface, and then in the back you could mount either a Mac Mini or a NUC. It'd be really cool if the Blackmagic surfaces have a space in the back for like a NUC that you could put in that could become your audio processing engine. Because then it's just, you could turn up to a gig and slap down your little 10 channel surface with a NUC in the back, and you've got like, a really flexible processing unit in the same sort of package as like a DM3 space. That would be really cool, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to have it separately. I think they're going to keep it as two separate products. So you have your processing engine, and then the people who want the Surface buy the Surface, the same as they've done with the ATEMs, where you buy your ATEM, you use the software control, and then they have a separate panel that's quite expensive if you want to buy the panel that bolts on. But other people have made panels for that as well, so I'm fully expecting there to be custom panels being made for like this kind of thing. I think the other thing that would be really cool, I've not seen it yet, but I imagine that you will be able to have multiple panels on the same hardware I/O engine, where each panel has a separate set of channels or overlapping channels, and then each one of them essentially has its own mix. So whether it's going to main 1, main 2, main 3, so you can have a broadcast drop with 1 or 2 audio I/O engines, main and the backup, and then you can essentially have different little studios or different audio mix rooms that can choose their channels and choose their output bus and do a separate mix. But it's one hardware engine. I can see that happening. I can see that being a really cool feature, and that would certainly be very useful for a lot of jobs that I can think of. Right, I'm going to call this a night because I have nothing more to show on this. Unfortunately, I'm very disappointed. Got my ATEMs out, expecting it to work, but the software doesn't work. Interestingly, the software, whatever is wrong with these, if I pull the network cable out from these ATEMs, I can't now control these over USB. So whatever the update has done has completely disabled USB control of the devices, which is really frustrating because it essentially it's now broken. So I'm going to have to roll back to a prior version of ATEM, the control software, and refirmware these devices with an older firmware, because the new firmware just doesn't. If you can't control it over USB, it's kind of like a brick device. So yeah, I'm going to have to do that, unfortunately. But I'm going to call it a night there, because there is nothing more I can say, I think, on this piece of software. I think it's got great direction, but for now, it's not really. They call it a beta, but I don't think you could use this on a big show. I don't even think you could use it on a small show. I think this is test, very much test environment beta, not a use it on a show beta. But yeah, there we go. Right, well, thank you very much for joining me, and hope some questions might be answered, and I'm sure there will be lots of changes coming with Blackmagic, as there always are, over the next probably 2 years. So yeah. Alright, cool. See you later.